The hospital never sleeps, and Noah could already distinguish in the dark the low timbre of the night shift intercom, the rhythmic dragging of a stretcher across immaculate floors, the confidant whisper of the nurses in the cafe. In recent weeks at Anna's bedside, she has learned not to expect immediate miracles, but to celebrate every nuance. A longer sigh, a twitch of the eyelid, a tiny movement of the finger. Anna's room was her private vigil. On the table, photos of the two of them still. Children in the countryside, cards that received few visitors, notes from Leah, a dried rosebud kept from last spring, all lined up like amulets. Noah had also created a silent ritual. Each morning, he read an excerpt from a book, read travel articles he found in battered hospital magazines, reached out to hold hers, even if the cold palm didn't reciprocate. Hope there was fluid. Noah often wondered if Anna listened to him, if the words crossed the walls of the unconscious, if they could serve as a thread to bring her back. Was it possible to feel love in silence? On that freezing Sunday, the weather seemed different. The drizzle washed the windows of the intensive care unit, lining the windows with drawings of rivers. Noah was almost dozing off when he felt, he couldn't tell later if it was a dream or a perception, the subtle pressure of Anna's fingers on his hand, a slight, almost imperceptible squeeze. It took seconds, long as eternities, until the mind, asleep from the routine of waiting, understood. "Anna," he whispered, his voice low, hesitant. Her sister's face moved little, but yes, her eyelashes trembled. She coughed lightly, as if trying to draw air from a deep place, wedged between worlds. The heart monitor changed the rhythm, beeping with the enthusiasm of a human heart in the face of the unprecedented. Noah jumped out of his ridiculous chair, tripped over his own shoes. "Call the nurse! Call the doctor on duty!" The voices now mixed with the alarm, the adrenaline. The agile team invaded the room, checking signals, adjusting serum, exchanging technical words in closed circuit. Noah felt everything move around him. Only his gaze remained fixed on Anna's. For a moment, she lost herself, looked around without acknowledging, her eyes opaque, indistinct, as if looking for herself in the fog. Then, slowly, she found her way to the surface. "You," he stammered, lips dry, brittle. "Hey, Anna, I'm here. I'm here." The smile materialized slowly, one side. Of the face only. Enough for Noah to cry, without sound, like a boy keeping secrets. When the doctors gave way, Noah sat up again, exhausted and absorbed. He took Anna's hand with reverence, afraid of breaking the newborn miracle. "You're back, sis. I knew you would come back. It doesn't matter how long it took." Anna looked at him again, that unique depth of someone who has crossed distances that not even words can reach. On the hospital dashboard, the morning light was beginning to dissolve. The gloom, and for the first time in many days, Noah noticed another scent. Not only the serum, the alcohol, the asepsis, but the real promise of the beginning. Anna closed her eyes, exhausted, but her hand now wouldn't let go of Noah's. And he knew. There, still inside the hospital before any discharge or diagnosis, that this was a crossing. Only then did he realize faith itself is this interval between the almost and the yes. Anna's recovery was both a miracle and a trial. In the dimly lit rectangular mirror of the hospital bathroom, she barely recognized her own face. Familiar traits dissolved by trauma, dark circles under her eyes, skin marked by bruises and fresh scars. The movement seemed to belong to someone else, someone who needed to relearn how to be herself each morning. Noah followed every step. He felt like a ship's commander in rough seas, sometimes firm, sometimes adrift. It was so easy, he thought, to have hope when the goal was just to survive the storm. Easy. To trust during the crossing, when there are no choices. But now it was necessary to rebuild routines, to face the daily slowness of new beginnings. At the hospital, the achievements were minimal and monumental at the same time. Anna opening a bottle of water by herself, the first clumsy path with the walker down the corridor, sitting for 15 minutes without support, feeling the sunlight graze the bed. Each small victory was accompanied by frustration, exhaustion, and sometimes tears. Shed on the pillow, away from Noah's eyes. He worked as a nurse and shield. He heated compresses, organized medicines in the pack, mediated visits, blocked friends or family members when Anna did not want to talk. More than ever, she felt responsible, and at the same time, powerless, because there was no button, calculation, or routine that would speed up healing. The time of hospitals is circular. The shifts follow one another without difference. Lights always on, warm meals, repeated protocols. Noah marked the days not in a calendar, but in achievements. Today, Anna managed to get up without help. Today, Anna cried less. Today, Anna asked to see the sea. And it was there that the first discussions began. Anna, restless, groping the newly discovered limit of her own body, longed for haste. I need to get out of here, Noah. I can't stand the smell of this place anymore. I can't stand feeling like I'm trapped, depending on everything and everyone. Noah always answered cautiously, voice trained for patience and risk. Calm down. You need to give your body time, Anna. If you push too hard, it can be worse. It's just a few more tests. Anna exploded, murky anger wrapping the words. You're afraid. It always has. It controls everything all the time. Even my pain. That's not how I'm going to improve. The clash was not only physical, it was a philosophy era. Noah wanted to protect from the world, from the accident, from his sister's own impulsiveness. Anna wanted to live. To prove that she was alive, even if to do so she risked falls, relapses, failures. The small victories came mixed with fear. When Anna left the hospital, she felt the wind for the first time in weeks. The smell of the sea was almost a reality check, salty steam mixed with promises of the past. Noah held her hand tightly as she dragged her feet to the boardwalk. The first walk together outside the hospital was slow and full of silences. Anna was quickly fatigued, and Noah sucked all her self-control out of suggesting coming back. I need to feel the waves. 2 minutes later, she was crying, not of physical pain, but of absurd and astonishing joy. At the end of that day, when they returned home, now transformed into a recovery base with grab bars, blankets strewn about, the smell of soup and fresh flowers, Anna looked out the window at the sea, illuminated by the last sun. She said, almost in a whisper, "The disaster was when I lost control. But perhaps the cure is precisely not to control everything back." Noah stood still, taking the words like a flood tide, now receding, now splashing new hope on the sand of fear. It was true. They were not safe. There was no guaranteed happy ending. But they were together, learning that the next step is not a return to normal. It is always a new world to build. The routine of convalescence, even when quiet, has the weight of the world turning in slow motion. The hands of the clock ticked lazily, and the afternoons, forcibly extended, never seemed to fulfill their promises of novelty. But it was enough for Noah to announce the walk by the sea for domestic immobility to bite, and Anna, wearing the oversized coat, pulling the light blanket over her legs, felt an awakening under her ribs. The noise of the wheels of the chair sounded sometimes like a caress, sometimes like a lament against the stones of the path. The cobblestone streets cracked in the dense heat, releasing metallic odors mixed with the sweet acid of the sea air. On one side, silent houses, doors creaking softly, yellowed curtains flickering in what was left of the morning breeze. Barefoot children streaked the sky with worn kites behind the walls, their cries echoing like memories of other summers. On the third afternoon, they took the same route. They looked from afar, and there he was, the old fisherman, a lonely figure next to the scratched wooden boat, his damp nets spread out like patched wings. His elbows were resting on his knees, his head protected by a blue cap already faded by the sun and salt. His gaze, resting on the thread between sea and horizon, was one of fierce peace, the kind that can only be achieved when one has faced all the storms. The place seemed to yield to his presence. Seagulls avoided their surroundings, dogs passed by with their tails low, even the young fishermen slowed down their pace in the presence of that full silence. There was an aura there, almost an invisible gravity. Anna, seized by unexpected. Courage, or perhaps by a secret desire to belong to the set, decided to speak before losing her momentum. "You're always here, aren't you?" The old man took a long time to answer, lightly fiddling with the knot of one of the hammocks, the damp cotton between his fingers already crooked by time. When he raised his face, a half-smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "The sea never sleeps, and I've also gotten used to not sleeping much." His voice was deep, rough, with the smell of old tobacco and wind. Noah let out a brief laugh, drowned out by his own thoughts. He had never known exactly whether the fisherman's presence reassured or unsettled him. There was something in the sunken eyes, an absence of haste, which evoked respect and a bit of childlike fear. Without transition, the fisherman began to count. He didn't speak directly to his brothers. He seemed to address his story to an invisible audience, to the stones, to the wind, to the bones of the drying nets. He spoke of nights when the sky seemed to fall on boats, of the black hole that the sea draws when it is rough, of the acrid smell of oil that escapes in storms. With a muddy finger, he traced scars on his arm. This was from the hook, in the rush to pull the fish that turned out to be bigger than me. This one, jellyfish. It seems that it burns what is outside and inside as well. As he spoke, his hands peeled off strings from the net with an old, almost trance rhythm. Anna found herself fascinated, a child in front of the storyteller, her body leaning a little forward, her eyes shining in a mixture of longing and amazement. Her face, little scarred by the sun, but scarred now by the scars of survival, softened to hear. The sky was heavy, indecisive. Leaden clouds were piling up, but the sun still slivered golden gulps on the crests of the waves. Time, in constant mirroring dialogue. After a while, perhaps because she felt at ease, perhaps because she could not stand the distance between speech and desire, Anna advanced. "I thought I was going to die, you know? When I woke up, I prayed that I didn't even have to remember. Then I just kept thinking, what do I do now?" The old man looked at her. Her eyes were blue-gray, like the farthest foam from the sea, and everything fit in them, patience, challenge, a bit of sadness. Everything is a little more beautiful. And more dangerous, too. He turned to Noah, who was crouching, picking up broken shells, a recent habit, putting pieces together to rearrange. The idea of whole. The sea teaches, but only for those who listen quietly. The next pause was musical. The rhythmic sound of oars beating the old hull of the boat, barking that drifted away between the dunes, the rustling of the bulb of a net being unwound. Noah absorbed not only the voice, but the fisherman's way of lining up already rusty tools, of giving each net, each line, an almost ceremonial bow, as if touching a reliquary. That became routine. Every evening, they saw the fisherman in the same corner, at the same time, always surrounded by that comfortable solitude, filled with repeated and never the same stories. Reports of friends almost drowned, loves carried away by the sea, companionship among fishermen lost in the fog, survivors who came back different, people who left and never gave news, but sometimes reappear in dreams as a good haunting. On certain days, he spoke of constellations, pointing to strings of small white dots in the already twilight sky. Morning. Star, there. When the sky closes, it is the one who saves the course of those who have no dry land nearby. For every sailor, a star is a promise. Land is never a guarantee, only hope. Noah absorbed everything, even attentive to what was not said. Between the lines, the slow gestures of preparing the hook, the way the old man adjusted his threadbare blouse on his shoulders, and, even as an old man, still cast the wide look of a boy in the moments before the dark. Anna felt a different calm. The muscles of the neck and shoulders, previously always tense, relaxed. He slept better. She no longer woke up at night, overcome by the panic of what was to come. Fear has been losing its sharpness. Instead, a gentle curiosity was born. I wonder what the old man saved for tomorrow? On one of those afternoons, with the sky painted by the last oranges and the beach already empty, Noah asked, almost in a whisper, "Aren't you afraid of the sea?" The old man looked at the horizon, scanned the waves. With the precision of someone who reads a sacred manual, and replied, "Yes, I do. I feel afraid. But I also miss the time when I didn't know what I was capable of being afraid of. The secret isn't to conquer fear, Noah. It's to learn to navigate it." Anna smiled at her brother, touched by the absurdity of the truth told so lightly. Noah responded. On the way back, they headed through the streets already in dim light, the chair sliding softer, the heart too. Anna thought out loud, almost to herself. "I think I need to learn to count my storms too." Noah smiled. I knew now that no wound was so wild if it could be narrated in a low voice alongside those who understand. That night, they slept lulled by voices from other times, resounding not for the end of fear, but for the consolation of sharing. The old fisherman, there on the shore, seemed to know. The moon was rising, the promise of more stories, more listening, that there is always a new morning to launch into the sea. Convalescence extended time. It dilated each afternoon to the limit of exhaustion, making the house an aquarium where all emotion was reflected, blurred, and magnified. Anna was irritated at the slightest obstacle. Noah, increasingly zealous, gave the feeling that he cared not out of affection, but out of fear. The living room floor creaked under the anxious footsteps. The yellow light of the kitchen seemed to faint over the furniture. That afternoon, the world collapsed for almost nothing. The sound of the falling knife, the metallic jingle in the dirty sink, sounded like thunder between the sweaty walls of remembrance. Anna exploded before she thought. The voice was hoarse, pierced by unwept tears. Why do I need to prove that I'm someone again every day? I'm tired of asking permission to exist, Noah. Don't you notice? It's not just the accident that took me off my feet. It's depending on you for everything, even to cut a fruit. On the other side of the table, Noah stood. Motionless, as if receiving one blow waiting for another. In his eyes, the fear was not of what he had heard, but of what had always been trapped between words, the concrete threat of loss. Her desire to protect had become a shield, and the shield was unwittingly becoming a prison for both of them. The silence that followed was icy. Anna looked out the window, seeing the sea in the distance, without actually seeing it. When you protect me so much, you're not giving me love. It's giving me a limit. It wasn't supposed to be like this. Noah took a deep breath and felt the small trembling of his hands. I feel so helpless, Anna. Since everything happened, it's as if every little flaw in your body is my fault too. I don't know how to be anything other than what I am, someone who fears absences more than risks. The tears came this time as relief, first in her eyes, then in his eyes. Anna let her head fall on her arm resting on the table. Noah crossed the kitchen, the hesitant. Footsteps of someone groping for minefield. You think I've always been brave, right? I ran away. Every time I jumped off the cliff or changed direction without telling anyone, it was so I wouldn't feel my own insecurity. It wasn't bravery, it was fear and irony. Now I can't run away from anything, nor of myself. For a moment, it seemed that there would be no solution, only landscapes of tiredness. But it was the kind of silence that prepares the earth for rain. Noah touched his sister's shoulder, unraveling the distance of so many years of misunderstandings. I'm sorry, Anna. I'm sorry to make my fear a prison for both of us. I never knew how to separate caring from controlling. She looked up, two children meeting again in those adult faces, and in a fragile impulse they embraced. It was not a triumphant embrace, but a rough, somewhat awkward embrace, two bodies relearning the limits of the other, accepting the discomfort and relief of being together in their own unfinished lives. The sound of rain against the glass clothed the moment of poetry. Outside, the sea mixed its smell with that of wet land. Inside, a tacit agreement floated. No more demands, no more mythical figures of courage or care. Just two whole brothers, tired, ready to share the burden of trying again tomorrow. Before going to sleep, Anna turned in the doorway, her voice thin, almost childlike. Promise that if I fall, you won't try to stop it. Will you only be around? Noah smiled in that rare way where laughter is born of sadness and overflows it. Always around, never for control, just for love. In that silence, far from the end of nightmares, but close to a real new beginning, they both felt. Forgiveness does not erase pain, it only illuminates the shadowed parts. There was still a lot to be faced, but for the first time, Anna and Noah didn't feel alone in this. They slept lightly, not because they were healed, but because, together, the ground finally seemed safe enough to sustain any fall or rebirth. The reconciliation was a flash of light, not a flash. It didn't seal the cracks, but it went through the cracks, creating spaces where before there was only shade and rigidity. Anna and Noah began to discover, in the slowness of the days, that happiness was not the absence of pain, but living with her. They woke up early, lulled by familiar sounds, the creaking of the window, the sprinkling of sparrows on the antenna, the smell of coffee invading rooms that were still half. Dark. Anna unceremoniously tested her own body every morning. First to get up without support, then drag your feet across the icy floor. One day, the audacity to touch the stove and prepare with trembling hands his own tea. Each small gesture was a mute conquest, a mosaic of intimate victories that only she knew how to measure. Noah, on the other side of the house, waited, sometimes silently, sometimes pretending to pay attention to the old newspaper as if he didn't follow the choreography of his sister's steps, too. There was an unspoken agreement between them to respect time, to celebrate without fanfare, to console without mercy. When Anna stumbled, and there were many times, he held on, not with despair, but with delicacy. The touch of those who gradually learn the difference between supporting and limiting. Meals have become rituals of reconstruction. The sound of butter crackling in the pan, the scent of toasted bread, the improvised cutting of fruit. Everything was a simple celebration, shared breathing. At the table, they smiled at the chaos. Anna invented characters, dubbed accents, made Noah laugh with childhood stories that both had already modified to the taste of memory. On other mornings, when the sadness was deep, they shared the silence without charge. They were just together, listening to the waves breaking in the distance, accepting the mourning for what was lost. By evening dusk, Anna's desire to feel the sand between her fingers was almost physical. She put on shoes, walked down slow steps, Noah a few steps behind, sometimes attentive, sometimes carefree ahead, already trusting that she would overcome the most difficult stretch. In the air, the smell of salt, the dry cries of seagulls, the fine texture of the breeze carrying ancient whispers. The beach was a territory of healing and challenge. With each wave, Anna confronted fear and nostalgia. The cold water was shock, baptism, the border between past and future. One of those afternoons, Anna took off her shoes, folded the hem of her pants, and went into the water, feeling first the roughness of the stones, then the sweetness of the green slime, finally the living presence of the ocean licking her ankles. Noah hesitated on the edge, the reflection of the sun dancing on his adult and boy faces at the same time. He ended up giving in, his feet together at the edge of the surf. Anna closed her eyes. Before, I thought I needed to dominate the sea. Now I know. He is the one who teaches me. It's not to win, it's for dancing. Noah laughed, genuinely free of any weight. There, hand in hand with soaked cloths and wind-washed hearts, they discovered something new. It was not possible to control the sea, nor life, nor the other. But it was possible, yes, to move with it, to accept the waves and the intervals. Faith in motion. There were falls. Anna stumbling into the entrance, Noah dropping a glass, annoyed with himself. Arguments resurfaced, ghosts opened old. Closets, the routine became out of tune. But after the scare, there were less severe looks, laughter bordering the silence, a timid lightness among the rubble. Every first time, the whole night's sleep, the trip to the market, the dinner served to returning friends, was celebrated as an Olympic achievement. The days seemed, at the same time, endless and unprecedented. The old fisherman appeared from time to time. He sat with them on the sand, threw bait into the sea, and sometimes did not even speak. He just watched, as someone who respects the secret of small things. In one of these meetings, Anna confessed her fears, the doubts that came back in the most fragile moments. The old man listened and, between wrinkles, smiled. "If you're not afraid, girl, you're standing still. Fear is just a sign that there is still current. That's what swimming is all about. Keep going, even though you're shaking." At night, in the shade of the damp walls and the distant lighthouse, Anna and Noah met, not always by logic, but always by affection. A quick touch on the arm, a mumbled sentence, the paced breathing of the two when they finally fell asleep. It was not necessary to solve everything, just keep moving, accepting the tides. In imperfection, they found belonging. In pain, they knew how to laugh. In the shipwreck, they learned to swim again, but this time, side by side. The mist trembled, faint and silver, like a veil between worlds. When the old fisherman appeared at the door, he brought not only the silent invitation, but the feeling that the whole of nature was holding its breath, waiting for that moment. The staff played the stones of the garden like an ancestral drumbeat, resounding deep in the chest of the brothers. Today, the sea is like a mirror. His voice seemed to come from a time before memory. The stones are not the end of the line, just the beginning. Come with me. Anna hesitated. On the outside, the skin no longer showed bruises. Inside, the scares were latent. The fear of relapse, the fear of being held hostage by one's own body again. The ritual of preparation took place almost in reverence. Noah ran his hand slowly through the zippers of his vest, feeling the rough texture of the fabric, every detail recalling nights of vigil, trembling hands, silent promises. Anna put on her old boots that smelled of nostalgia and sea air, experiencing a mixture of longing and modesty, as if she were re-entering her own history. As they stepped on the pier, the world seemed suspended, as if time gave way to mystery. The boat rocked, attached to the pier board with a threadbare rope, drawing slow circles over the smooth water. Anna placed her hand on the worn wood, her fingers feeling grooves etched by other summer's trips, salt strokes and storms. Noah supported her, without squeezing, allowing the space of fear and courage. When they settled down, they didn't know whether to say goodbye to the bank, or who they had been until then. The engine cracked life. Vibrating through the hull and bones, they looked at each other furtively, sharing the same small amazement and the strange peace of those who accept risk. The sea under the mist had become vast, opaque, infinite. The lines between water and sky flashed as if they were invitation and threat at the same time. Anna listened to her own heart, sometimes racing like a cornered animal, sometimes placid to the hypnotic rhythm of the waves. Noah, by his side, let the wind wash away. Thoughts of control and fear, embracing the possibility of trusting. Not because he was safe, but because he was ready not to know. The fisherman, eyes chewed by time and salt, turned off the engine with the naturalness of someone who knows all climates. The silence settled between them, dense, full of meanings. Many people think that a miracle is walking on water, he murmured, his voice small and deep as a secret. But the miracle, it is sailing without a guarantee of arrival, without seeing beyond the fog. Only those who accept to take with them what they do not understand advance. For a moment, nothing existed but this soft limbo between past and poison of uncertainty. Anna smiled, not the smile of relief, but the smile of those who understood that happiness and fear are parts of the same salt. When the old man asked, "Shall we go further?" it was as if an invisible door opened. Anna answered before thinking, "Let's go." They sailed without a clear destination. The boat seemed to float on the threshold of the real and the dreamlike. Dolphins cut the sea in the distance in silent leaps, punctuating the air with faint promises. The old fisherman hummed softly, mixing old songs with whispers of winds and memories that only the sea hears. The brothers kept silent, connected not by words, but by the miracle of not having to translate the unspeakable. When the light returned, sun growing through the curtains of fog, their faces seemed renewed. It was as if, for a moment, they were being baptized again by the light, giving them back the rightful weight of things. The past no longer hurt, the future no longer haunted. Anna leaned against the wood, the cold serving as an anchor, and held Noah's hand. He smiled, letting go of everything he couldn't control. The return was silent, but populated by the certainty that they would step on another beach when they disembarked. Anna was no longer a hostage to her own limits. Noah was no longer the jailer of ghosts. With each splash, with each wave, they recognized themselves as daring, not because they faced the sea and survived, but because they chose to cross again, knowing that there is no definitive protection, only renewed surrender. Feeling the stones under his feet and the firmness of the earth, Noah, for the first time since the accident, did not only feel the relief of the arrival, he felt a sincere desire for what comes next. The next step, the next dive, the next mystery. Anna looked at the horizon, not with fear, but with serene curiosity. The old fisherman, as he jumped out of the boat, turned around smiling, leaving only the mythological cue of someone who carries a secret. Remember, beyond the ocean, each one finds what they did not have the courage to seek here. The sea at that moment was already beginning. And when the wind blew back a distant song, coming from beyond the horizon, where only those who accept to get lost to find themselves go, the brothers knew. They were ready. Ready for a new calling. Ready for what only happens later, when everything seems to start again. Closure. When they returned to shore, Anna and Noah stepped out of the old boat with firm but unhurried steps. It was as if they had let part of the old fears dissolve in the salt, in the wind, in the horizon, that no longer scared but invited. Life has not resumed its old course. Nothing was ever the same again. Not the two brothers, not the domestic routine, not the relationship with the sea. The scars on Anna remained, visible and hidden. Noah was still cautious, but now he knew when to let go of his hand. There were gray days, relapses, silences, stumbling blocks. There were also clear mornings, unexpected laughter, small miracles of coexistence. The old fishermen sometimes still crossed their path, always with a different story, advice said at the right time, a subtle invitation to never lose fascination in the face of mystery. They learned to be grateful for him, and for the time when everything was uncertain, because it was there, in vulnerability, that they grew up. Anna went back to walking long distances, sometimes alone, sometimes next to her brother. She started to share her stories, to no longer hide her pain, and to inspire others who were also afraid to start over. Noah now looked at the sea without regret. He admired the unspeakable. He no longer sought impossible control. She learned that caring is not suffocating, and that truly loving is allowing the other to make their own crossing. On nights when the wind brought the smell of sea air and promise, the brothers sat side by side on the sand, looking at the same infinity where almost everything was lost, and also almost everything was found. The ocean, fickle and infinite, continued to call, not for danger nor for escape, but for movement, for the inherent risk of living. Anna and Noah understood, finally, that the crossing never ends. Each morning is a new invitation, each fear a wave to be. Crossed, each reunion a simple miracle. And that's how they continued, sailing together, trusting, making mistakes, starting over, always with the ocean reminding them that the most important thing is to have the courage to respond to the call, even if everything around them is a mystery.